Hi guys, Luke Carpenter here from WrestleBeards Worldwide. Welcome to today's podcast.
WrestleBeards, we got all your wrestling gear. WrestleBeards, woo! Hairy man with dirty beards. WrestleBeards Worldwide.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Shrek, and today I welcome you to the first ever WrestleBeards Worldwide podcast. This will drop Sunday evenings on the official YouTube channel for WrestleBeards Worldwide. Each week, our podcast will explore some of the juiciest current events in the world of professional wrestling, our own takeaways from the past week's Raw and SmackDown, some entertaining top 3 lists, and even a little homework for you to dwell on until the next podcast. So, today being episode 1, we'll have a slightly different format than usual for this episode, as I'll be introducing to you for the first time my fellow co-host for the podcast and co-founder of the WrestleBeards Worldwide movement. So without further ado, introducing to the podcast for the first time ever, hailing from Gravesend, United Kingdom, by way of Jakarta, Indonesia, at a height of 5 foot 10 inches and weighing in at 215 pounds. Let me welcome the undisputed co-host of the show, Luke, the Lucky Carpenter. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks, sir. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. This has been a long time overdue.
Yeah, it has. Two or 3 years in the making, I think.
Yeah.
And it's all just come to a head the last month or so.
We've been
yeah, I'm excited to get going.
It had to take us moving to different countries in order to get this rolling, which is a bit weird.
We did. So it would have been far better in person. And one day we might do it in person, I think. But for now,
it'll happen.
We'll be doing it like this.
Sure. Well, why don't you let our listeners know a little bit about who you are, for starters, and where you're living in the world at the present time.
So as you said, I'm Luke Carpenter. I'm a British expat living in Jakarta, Indonesia, where I've been here for the last 5 or 6 years, and also where I met Shrek. And I'm a teacher by day, an enthusiast of professional wrestling in my spare time, and have lots to talk about.
Awesome. So you mentioned that we are mates from back in Jakarta, which is where I used to live. How did we come to know each other and become friends?
I think we ran around in the same circles. I don't actually remember. I couldn't pinpoint the exact time. I remember a trip to Bali where we kind of crossed paths. You were on a rugby tour with your rugby guys, Camo Bros, and we kind of crossed paths. And one thing led to another. We both worked out that we have a shared love for wrestling and talking about wrestling and our past memories, and kind of just used to be the default setting, didn't it? When we would link up, that would be what we would go back to.
Totally. Well, for those who don't understand, the expat community abroad, especially in Indonesia, it's very transient. People come and go from all over the world. And it's very much a community feel. So people become like each other's family. So over time, we obviously spent Christmases, New Year's, birthdays together. And we've had a blast through the years. Not living together in the same town anymore, but I think we're going to give this a good crack.
We will.
All right. So to kickstart our first official podcast, I'd like to ask you a few questions to let our listeners know a little bit about how Luke ticks and why you are unashamedly a pro wrestling fan. So, are you ready to get underway?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, the WrestleBeard interview format will play out in the mantra of the WWE slogan, then, now, and forever, where we will look closely at different times in your wrestling love story. Ooh.
Good. Cool. Okay.
All right, so let's get underway with the then segment. So, Luke, how exactly did you get into professional wrestling, and what was it that you were watching at the time?
Well, I seem to, thinking back on it, I seem to remember my older cousins, Matthew and James, being into it and watching it on Sky Sports on a Saturday afternoon. And I remember just being fascinated. My first sort of real memory of it is being fascinated with how big and unlike what I'd imagine a sportsman would look like. So we've got people like Bam Bam Bigelow. We've got people like Yokozuna, Earthquake, I remember as well, from a very young age. And just being fascinated, like how do these men, like how are they athletes? Like I couldn't fathom it. So it wasn't really the wrestling, but the personalities that attracted me to professional wrestling in the first place.
And was it WWF at the time that you were watching first out?
It was, yeah. So WWF and then exposure to WCW and Nitro and Thunder a few years on. But yeah, probably I would say maybe 94, 95 was when I really got into it. So when I was like 6 or 7, possibly a little younger. But that's that's the sort of era that we were watching, and certainly WWF at the time and firsthand.
Fantastic. Okay, so you were into WWF in the 90s. Who were the stars that were particularly your favorites in this era, and what did you like about them?
So my favorite wrestler growing up until his terrible storyline in maybe the mid 2000s, when I kind of dipped out of wrestling a little bit, was Kane. I was scared of Kane. I was amazed by Kane. He was everything that I enjoyed about wrestling. I really liked the ministry stuff as well with The Undertaker and Vince McMahon. But Kane was my guy. Kane was the one that I loved.
Totally, and he's the kind of character that gets you engrossed in it because he's so unlike everyone else. He's a bit of a supernatural character, and it's something different, isn't it?
Well, the story behind it, and the brother storyline between him and Taker, it was captivating. It was brilliant, and like I'm talking sort of Big Red Machine Kane, where he's got the original mask, the original suit. Yeah, he looked amazing.
Totally agree. All right. So now, obviously, you've become a fan. You're watching the show, but you live in the UK at the time, and living outside of the US, you don't get to see a lot of regular live events from the WWE until you do. So can you tell us a little about the first show you ever attended, and tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough with a couple of school friends of mine to be able to go to Capital Carnage. So this was like the biggest, well, it was the biggest event I'd been to, and still is the biggest like pay-per-view wrestling event I've ever been to. But at that time, like the excitement that we all swept up in, going to school in the lead up to it and talking about it and going to school afterwards and being amazed by it. I've gone back and rewatched Capital Carnage a few times recently on the network, and it hasn't stood the test of time too well, unfortunately. It wasn't the greatest pay-per-view.
Can you recall any of
it was good. I got to see Kane. I got to see The Rock. Well, I remember The Rock and X-Pac. I remember that, and this is when X-Pac was with, I think he was with Tori. Remember Tori? I can't remember her surname. And the one who sort of linked between him and Kane. But he was like wrestling for, it was a title match, which even back then I couldn't really understand. The big memory from it and the excitement growing up, the excitement leading up to the day was seeing the New Age Outlaws. Like they were the coolest thing. They were the coolest thing around. And with like the introduction, I remember just screaming it with my mates. And of course I was like 10. I was 9 or 10. So I was really young. I was still in primary school. And it was great. But the New Age Outlaws were pretty cool to see. LOD were pretty cool to see at the time as well. They were LOD 2000 after they'd returned. They still had their roid bellies, but they after they'd returned from WCW and came over again. And talking, like we were speaking about Pat Patterson, I didn't realize this, but looking back, Gerald Briscoe was the special guest referee that night for the Fatal 4-Way match.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I have no idea why. I think it was a way for Steve Austin to get screwed, and then in the end, obviously Austin went and won by pinning Mankind, I think. But yeah, it was a great event, great time, and I've been to many since then. Like they come on the house shows every I think it's every 2 years. It's twice every year they come on the house shows. And so I've taken my younger brother there, who's 13 years younger than me. So I used to take him for his birthdays every year, and we'd go and we'd see Triple H. We saw Umaga. I think I've seen The Undertaker, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels. Like, they were pretty good. They're good fans.
Okay. Well, no longer are we kids like the fans we were of yesteryear. We're fully grown men with careers, wives, fiancés, responsibilities, yet we are still massive wrestling fans and wrestling junkies. So why do you still continue to watch, and do you cop it from other mates and family members?
Well, yes, I do cop the flack about watching wrestling, a kids show. Like these same cousins I told you about who got me into it, they're of course no longer into it because they have grown up and it's kind of fallen by the wayside. But I still get the odd dig from them when I say about, oh, WrestleMania's this weekend or Royal Rumble's this weekend. Why do I still watch it? As I said, like in the mid 2000s, I kind of fell away from it a little bit, and I would tune back in around Royal Rumble season and then the lead up to WrestleMania, and I'd watch back to back. And then I guess, I don't know, 2008, 2009, I really got back into it. And that's when I started going to these house shows when they were on. Yeah, and I just think it's probably the one thing in the world I know the most about. So I've got a lot of knowledge and time invested into it, and I'm a bit stubborn.
Unashamedly.
So I kind of want to keep up with it, but it is something I enjoy. It's like you've got people who like watching soap operas, and they've watched it for 30 years of their life.
Don't you hate it?
It's kind of that soap opera for me. Like
I will
tune in and I'll watch it and I'll read about it and I'll listen about it.
Don't you hate it when these friends, they just go, oh, it's not real. Why are you watching it? It's fake. Oh, come on. What are you wasting your time watching Men for? Blah, blah, blah.
Men in tights. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. And that's something that we'll put up with for the rest of our lives, I'm sure, as long as we watch it for. But the people, like as I said, unashamedly, you said unashamedly. Yeah, I do. I am unashamedly a huge wrestling buff.
Awesome, bro. Well, for the product itself, it's changed quite significantly over the last couple of decades, and especially since we started both watching it when we were younger. What in this current time are you particularly a fan of, and who are the wrestlers that you enjoy watching these days?
Mm-hmm. So currently, like I still do love the whole build up from Royal Rumble through to WrestleMania. I think that's brilliant, and how the storylines interweave into each other. Obviously, the fact that we're probably not going to have a live Mania again is a bit disappointing, because that just is so epic and it's in great proportion. What I appreciate now, as opposed to when I was younger, is I appreciate the wrestling now. I appreciate the minds that go into it, the planning. I appreciate the art of wrestling rather than the storylines. Storylines I still enjoy, and they keep me hooked on it. But I appreciate the wrestling more. So people like Daniel Bryan, fantastic worker. I really like the New Day as a I really like the New Day as a tag team, which tag team wrestling wasn't something I really was ever into, but I think the New Day are really good. And Angelo Dawkins and whatever his name is, I can't remember the team name now.
Ford.
Yes, and Montez Ford. I think they're a great team as well. Yeah, like it's as I said, it's the art of the wrestling. And what Bray Wyatt is doing, like Bray Wyatt as a wrestling mind, he's a genius. Like he is so smart, and like what he's doing with Randy Orton right now, with Alexa Bliss right now, is that's keeping me hooked. That's getting me excited to think about and to read up about and to watch each week.
Totally. Okay, so the fact that we're actually embarking on this podcast journey together shows that we live and breathe wrestling. What exactly does a pro wrestling week look like for you, Luke? What kinds of things do you watch, get up to, things you might listen to, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like, and I really like this question. I think this is a great question. What does a wrestling week look like for someone? Because, as you said, we both share this love, but I'm sure that you and I do lots of different things to get to keep that going. So generally, I'll watch the highlights of Raw on a Tuesday morning, because it's a Tuesday morning here in Indonesia when it's on. I tune into NXT and I read an AEW. I have a look at what's going on there. I listen to my podcast, so I listen to live updated podcasts, Wrestle Talk, Wrestle Ramble with Luke and Dylan, I think it is. I listen to Brian Zane, and I try and sometimes get some Brian Alvarez and Dave, whatever his name is, Dave. What's his name? Dave, the very famous reporter.
Can't remember, but his name starts.
Passes me by. Yeah, and I should have planned that. But his reviews of the week. Then we have SmackDown on a Saturday. Dave Meltzer, that's it. Yeah. Then we have SmackDown, which I try and watch live because it's on a Saturday morning, and I get it through one of my sports apps here, so I watch that. I really want to try and sign up for the fan zone to watch it live and be on one of the screens, but I've not yet managed to do that. And then I'm a bit. This is a bit of a hidden secret. I watch the network quite a bit. Don't really watch too many of the side shows. I watch like the 24/7. It's pretty good, and 365 is really good. I go back and watch old manias. So the amount of times I've watched WrestleMania 17 is it's in the hundreds, I would imagine. And I watch old WrestleManias, and the way you can skip through the matches and just choose which match you want to watch. I still get excited by the TLC matches from back in the day and watch those. But I also listen to podcasts, and old podcasts that just make me laugh. So there is one called the Attitude Era podcast on SoundCloud.
Yeah, I know
Kevin Mahone. And it's so funny because it's basically recounting my childhood, talking about everything through the Attitude Era up until the invasion, and then when the invasion finished. And it's 4 hours, and I'll sit with my earphones in, and I'll be doing my work in and out of classes. And I get to the end of it, I go back to the start and listen to it again, because it's brilliant. The Attitude Era podcast is great. That's generally how my week looks. Like when there's a pay-per-view, so we've got TLC coming up soon, we've got the Rumble coming up soon, then I'll be watching that either live on a Monday morning if I don't have to work, or if I'm on school holidays, or I'll watch it throughout the day interspersed.
Yep. You haven't
that's really.
And your favorite, Total Bellas. You obviously don't find much time to watch that.
No. I don't find that much time to watch that. Although my fiance does. She likes watching Total Divas. She does actually watch that, and I've found myself a few times sort of looking over the shoulder for a little bit too long, and then wondering what I'm doing.
it's cringy. Sometimes I just don't like to see the curtain dropped that low on the illusion of pro wrestling. It's a little cringy.
Did you ever see that video of just to go off a little bit? Did you ever see that video of where Rusev was saying about he was on his Instagram live and he was promoting Total Bellas and he got Sheamus in the background and he says, "Don't tell people to watch that shite."
That's brilliant. I do love Sheamus. Well, we're
really
now
good. Oh, he's great.
The segment known as Forever. It's about future endeavors, I guess. And we'll kick it off by saying about dreams. So everyone has dreams, and yes, they are free. But in terms of professional wrestling, what would you like to achieve personally? You might want to be a wrestler. You might want to go to a particular show. And if it is a show, what would it be and why?
Well, it's a little known secret, but I apply for jobs at the WWE quite regularly to see if I can get in there, because I would like to work for the Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment Company. In regards to what I would like to do, I have no desire to be a wrestler. I would like. Yeah, I'd like to be in the business somehow, because again, I think that doing something that I like, doing a job as something that I love already would just be fantastic. And I would completely change my career path if something like that presented it to me in a heartbeat. Like you and I have said before, we both share the same dream to attend a WrestleMania and do the entire week. So the lead ups, do the fanzines, do the where you go and meet the wrestlers, the Hall of Fame the night before, then Mania, and I would like to do it where as like a once in a lifetime thing. I would like to be like ringside, like full package. Just go and save up, use my life savings, and yeah, one day have a big blowout and go to WrestleMania. Anyone I'd like to meet, you know this already. My favorite wrestler of all time is Kurt Angle, and of course, if I could sit down with Kurt Angle for 5 minutes and have a chat, and just because I think he's such a down to earth bloke, but yet an incredible wrestler and character back in the early 2000s. So yeah, that would be they're my points. Go to WrestleMania. Go to WrestleMania with Kurt Angle would be a dream.
Amazing. Hopefully it happens for you one day, brother.
One day.
Okay, so the name of the podcast and channel is WrestleBeards, and wrestling and beards are the two main vines that connect us. Obviously, yours is a bit more thicker and bushier than mine. How long have you been growing that epic beard, and who do you think is your wrestling beard doppelganger?
Well, luckily, in regards to beards, it's not that I grow it. I just don't like shaving. I hate to shave, and I look like a prepubescent teenager when I shave my beard. It takes years off me. So yeah, like I've been growing it for the last 5 or 6 years, and I did have one full shave last year and probably cleaned it off, and no one recognized me, which was a bit weird. It looked awful. It looked terrible. You can see like my horrible top lip. Yeah. In regards to a doppelganger, a beard I'd like to aspire to, when it does grow, it kind of goes. It doesn't. Yours kind of goes like this. Mine goes like that. So I always think that it goes a little bit like Braun Strowman when Braun Strowman first came into the WWE with the Wyatt family, and it's like it was out here. That's kind of what mine looks like when I grow it out and I don't trim it up or keep any real like sense to it. It goes like that. So yeah, Braun Strowman, original Braun Strowman, not now.
Feral, that is feral. No one wants to be Braun Strowman.
No, certainly not from back then.
Well, in terms of the podcast, we are in the infancy stages. I mean, this is the first podcast we are filming. Where would you like to see the podcast grow, and how particularly do you see your skills in that domain?
Well, as I said, like and I think you and I share the same skill here, is that it's not really a skill, but it's we both love this topic, and so sitting down on a Sunday afternoon really isn't a chore.
No,
like it's not. It's doing what I get to do anyway, but it's recording. We get to share it with people, which is cool, and there are far more wrestling fans than people realize, and the listenership on wrestling podcasts is very high, because it's blokes just, and sometimes girls as well, but people just talking about something they love, something they like to talk about and think about. In regards to this, like obviously if we hit the big time and we're like 2021's biggest YouTube views, then that's tidy little sum that will pay for our WrestleMania trip. But yeah, dreams are for free, as you said. What I would like is just for it to become a regular thing. People, if they enjoy it, to listen to it, and like to take inspiration from this idea that we've had. As you said, it's in its infancy stage, but this is already a 3-year project. You and I, we speak back and forth about things, so it's I just think how I'd like to see it go. I'd like to just, if people enjoy it, then keep listening to it.
Awesome. Well, let's have a little break and we'll return soon for the next segment, which will be the WrestleBeard Top 3. Whoa! See you soon. All right, welcome back. That was a really awesome first segment that we got out of the way there, and really awesome to have you part of the podcast now, Luke.
Yes.
So this is the segment that we call WrestleBeard Top 3, where each week we will have a different topic, and we'll both count down our top 3 in reverse order, and we'll have a chat about it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, the wrestling world was in mourning over the passing of WWE legend, first Intercontinental Champion, inventor of the Royal Rumble, and Hall of Famer, Pat Patterson. So I'll always remember Pat for his appearances in the Attitude Era. That was where I first became introduced with him, sure, like yourself, where he was one of McMahon's stooges. And his battles with Briscoe, as you mentioned earlier, and Crash Holly over the hardcore title with their lingerie.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the worst matches ever.
Oh. And then another fond memory of Pat Patterson for me was his appearance on the WWE Network-produced show, Legends House. It aired back in 2014, and it's still streamed, I believe, today on the WWE Network for those who haven't caught it. Basically, the show was 10 episodes long. It was in sort of the vein of Big Brother, where it featured retired WWE legends, and they all lived together in the same house and got up to a variety of antics and hijinks. And it was pretty cringeworthy at best, but the fact that it included all of the greats and they're all together again, that's what got me interested. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I've seen, like, I never sat down and fully watched all 10, but I've seen a couple of episodes, certainly. I remember one, it was quite a sad episode. Someone, I think maybe Gene Oakland got very upset about something. That was what I remember, and I remember reading about it and how people were a little bit outraged about these old guys being sort of taken advantage of. But it was good. Obviously, it shows the back end of wrestling, which is all known too well that it can have sort of detrimental effects on people. But Yeah, it was good. It was overall, it was a good show.
I think the wrestler you're talking about was Piper. He had some kind of problems, and he needed to sort of get away from the rest of it. And they actually polarized that and made it the focus of the show, where he was actually going through real life issues. So it's pretty bad. Well,
it was, like as you said, bit crass, bit cringeworthy. It did one job, it was entertaining at best. So.
However, you've pretty much just summed up the WWE there in a sentence. It's cringe-worthy, but still entertains us. So the show itself, Legends House, it included WWE Legends Gene Okerlund, the ring announcer. It had Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Whoa! It had Hillbilly Jim. It had Howard Finkel, the great announcer. It had Jimmy Hart, the manager for many great wrestlers. Rowdy Roddy Piper. It included Tony Atlas. And it also included Pat Patterson, of course, who we mentioned and just passed away last week. So he'll join his Legend House buddies, Okerlund, Finkel, and Piper in Wrestling Heaven. Okay, well, basically this segment, I thought we'd play a little fantasy booking if they were to ever, and I hope they don't, but if they were to ever a second season of Legend House, who would be our top 3 picks each for entering the house, just based on who would be interested in seeing their interactions with one another and so forth. So we'll start from 3 and head backwards to 1. How about you kick it off with your number 3 pick?
So my number 3 pick, and this wouldn't have been the same pick a year ago, but getting to know his personality more, that he's come out of the, he's sort of come out of his character, would be Taker. I think he would be good value. He's obviously the most current legend there is in the organization, or was after Survivor Series has just been. Like he would be in it because I think that he's actually shown his personality to the world, and he's a reasonably nice bloke. I think he would be good to have on it.
I couldn't agree more. I watched that recent, I think it was called The Last Ride documentary that he was featured.
It's excellent, yeah. Really good.
Really dropped the curtain, but in a respectful and interesting way about his life and career.
It did.
And also kind of miserably how he can't leave the business because it's just so much a part of his life. It was quite sad.
Yeah.
So seeing him in the house would be a good shout for sure.
It would, yeah.
All right. Well, my number 3 pick is a little bit different in vein. I chose one of my favorite Attitude wrestlers, The Godfather.
Nice.
He's a Hall of Famer now, and for the mere fact that I think if he came onto the show, he'd bring a bit of spice. He's obviously no stranger to the ladies and his hoe train. He really encompasses that in his real personal life these days, where I believe he owns a strip club. So
yeah, he does.
Having him like sort of embody his last gimmick, essentially, which he had a lot of them in his time in the WWE. I believe he was Papa Shango. He was
Papa Shango, the Good Father.
Yeah, he had a lot of gimmicks, and he was good at all of them. I think he was.
He was
a little underrated. Of course, a guy like him, he can't be the WWE champion or anything, but I do think he was one of the greats. And just seeing him in the house, interacting with some of the people, and I know he loves a little bit of the green smoke. So I think it'll be quite interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Yes, it would. It would.
Okay, well, let's get on to pick 2. Who's your number 2 pick?
So my number 2 pick, again, someone from the Attitude Era time, Mick Foley. Because Foley's just a very, very, very funny, quick-witted man. I think it would make for great entertainment. He is the only wrestler that I have met, only professional wrestler that I've met. I met Mick Foley in 2002 or 2003 at a Robot Wars convention. He was like the special guest. And I went nuts about it. Yeah, it was really cool. So yeah, I think he would be great. I think Foley would, and the stories that you'd have with with the Godfather, with the Undertaker, the stories they'd all have together would be great viewing. Great viewing.
Maybe Undertaker could throw Foley off of the top of the Legends House or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think there would be a third season.
No. Okay. Well, another great pick there, Luke. My number 2 pick is actually someone who's still involved in the wrestling business, but not with WWE. He's currently Lance Archer's manager / bodyguard, I guess you could say, in AEW. And that's Jake the Snake Roberts.
Very good.
I don't even know how they could have missed him out on the first season, other than perhaps his addiction issues that he was going through. But he's someone who just polarizes the industry and someone who, when I've looked back on the 80s and early 90s, he was such an epic figure in the company. I don't think they could fuse him into the Legends House. They did get him into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago after he overcame some issues in his life. Thank you, Dallas Page. But
yes, yeah.
I think, it would be funny for him to bring his snake along as well. Annoy some of the people, put it in their beds. He's a bit of a prankster, but he's also got that sadistic side where I think he'll get under people's skin. So I think he'd be a good one. I'd like to see him sort of break the Undertaker. That would be quite funny.
I would, yes. What do you make of him as the guy for Lance Archer? Lance Archer.
I don't know. I feel like they've tried to find a way in for him, but I don't know if Lance Archer actually needs a manager anyway. He's, what is he?
Yeah.
Murder Hawk. But I do think it's nice seeing him back on TV.
It really is. I think his character, it's pretty creepy at some point. Certainly when he first came in and he just does that slow walk down to the ring. I think it's great to see Jake Roberts back. Certainly after all the stuff like you touched upon, his addiction issues and the demons that he was facing a few years ago. Obviously, thanks to DDP for getting him and Scott Hall. He also did, but it's great. It's great that he's back. He's in the business that he loves.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, the house is getting quite packed now, and we've got 2 more to go. Who's your number 1 pick?
So my number 1 pick, and it's no surprise, is Mr. Kurt Angle, the 3 eyes. Just because he's brilliant. I was so happy when he came back to the WWE for the Hall of Fame, and his Hall of Fame speech was brilliant. He threw the milk on himself at the end.
Right.
But my favorite time of Kurt Angle was when it was during the Invasion points, and he hadn't switched over yet to the Alliance, to WCW and ECW, and it was the work that he, Stone Cold, and Vince McMahon did together. It was so funny, and
the little hat,
so
and stuff.
Yeah, the little hat, the guitar. It was I love presents.
I think he's one of the greats for sure. And I think if he was in the house, he's got some name value as well outside of wrestling.
Yes, yeah.
Eyes to the show that the first season didn't quite have.
No, and he's a very funny bloke. I've watched a lot of his stuff on Instagram and on Twitter. He's a really funny bloke outside of wrestling.
For sure. Okay, well, great 3 picks there, Luke. My number 1 pick is definitely someone who I think was missing from the first season. And let me tell you something, brother. It's obviously Hulk Hogan. I'm going to put on my Hulk Hogan bandana now because...
Oh, very cool.
So Hulk Hogan, he's obviously gone through some interesting times with sex tapes and a little bit of racism and a bit of money troubles. But that said, he is WWE. He is pro wrestling. Hulk Hogan, love him or hate him, he's not the most impressive wrestler, but he is one of the personalities that embodies the industry. And
absolutely,
I think it'd be interesting to have him on the show. Maybe show a bit more of his personality outside of the over-the-top stuff. Yeah, like
you're right in what you say there. Yeah, he is the embodiment of professional wrestling. But he is a guy outside of wrestling I don't know all that much about. I know the bad things. I know the lawsuits. I know, as you said, the sex tape, the racism, the things that have come to light. But you don't actually know what he's like as a bloke. You don't know what he's like as a person. So, yeah, I agree with you there.
And obviously, just seeing those pythons swinging around, quite funny to watch. And I think the interactions with the Undertaker, Godfather, and so on be quite funny.
It would.
That wraps up our top three, our inaugural top three, and I think it was a good one. I'll finally start by saying rest in peace, Pat Patterson, and hopefully rest in peace, Legends House. But anyway, that's it for this segment, and we'll come back soon with our final segment and a little bit of homework. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back, and it was great getting our inaugural top three out of the way. Some interesting legends going into our Fantasy Legends House. So next up, we have our last segment for the show, and it's entitled Homework, which is quite relevant as both of us are school teachers, and we couldn't go a day by without issuing some kind of homework out to our fellow listeners. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great little segment. It's something for us to leave you guys with, and yeah, like as I said, we don't just watch the shows; we read up about things. So this is what we're going to like. It's our recommendations, but in line with pro wrestling.
So we're going to steal a little play out of our friends over at the Black and the Brit. There's a nice mention for you guys, where they do a check it out each week. But our version's going to be some homework of the wrestling nature, where each week Luke and myself are going to offer up something for you to go away and check out, whether it be a wrestling documentary, a pay-per-view, a book, a podcast, or something else. So it should be interesting. So why don't you kick us off, Luke, with your pick for this week?
Yeah, so this was a book that I was recommended by a fellow colleague of mine when I was living in Russia called Mark Bullen. And it's a book called The Death of WCW. Now, obviously, we're talking about WWE and WWF and the love of wrestling. So why talking about the death of something? And it's because it's about one of the most important times in wrestling history. The two big companies, WCW and WWF, going head to head, and how through time WCW was founded, was made. It became this great big super organization they were doing better than the WWE at one point for a year or two, and then how the WWE finally came back and the different managements under Ted Turner and TNT, and their eventual demise, and how, looking back on something, how if there were so many different points in that timeline where if something else had been done differently, then it may not have ended up how it did. And I've read it maybe 5 or 6 times. At the end, the writer Brian Alvarez and R.D. Reynolds, it's co-written by them both. They have an open letter to Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, basically saying, use it as a warning for like a blueprint of how not to run a company, and do not run the WWE the same way, which I think is brilliant. But we could be going through the same thing with the WWE and AEW in a year or two's time if AEW continue on their trajectory and the WWE continue where they are, then we're gonna be going through this again with one company against the other.
No
so
doubt.
yeah, Death of WCW.
Well, I have actually read the book myself, and I can say it is a great read. And I do believe they actually have out a special anniversary edition now, where they've added a few updates and so forth. You might not know about that.
I'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah, for sure. But no, definitely want to put in your homework for the week. Thanks, Luke. Well, my addition to homework this week is a documentary / movie that came out earlier this month. It's called You Cannot Kill David Arquette. And it's directed by David Darg and Price James. And it follows around, I think it's a year in the life of actor David Arquette, who's obviously famous for the Scream movies and a number of other B movies that he's been in. But most notably, his time in WCW in the year 2000, where he was doing a cross promotion to promote his wrestling-themed movie called Ready to Rumble, which was fantastic, by the way. So the bookers in WCW, which probably adds in a bit to what you were talking about, the death of WCW before, they decided to put their World Heavyweight Championship belt onto David Arquette. And although I kind of like it myself, because I like to see a train wreck, I like to see a car crash, but at the same time, it was one of the biggest downfalls in that company. So not only that, but David Arquette got a lot of flack for it. And he was just an actor playing a role, whether it's in a movie or on the professional wrestling. And he was given death threats and told that he's ruined the industry and so on and so on. And this guy, he's one of the biggest fans of pro wrestling. And all he was doing was what he was told. And he was given the title. I don't think any one of us would have not done the same in his position. I definitely would have taken on. I'd be the 24/7 champion if I could. I'd be the women's champion. But I don't see how he should be held to blame, but I do see how it went down.
No, he shouldn't.
So this documentary actually entails how he wants to sort of make amends with the wrestling industry, and he actually gets back into the industry and has a lot of matches on the in the independent scene, including some hard matches, some luchador matches, some pretty gruesome stuff that guys who've been.
He had the death match, didn't he?
With I think his name's Nick Gage, and he nearly killed him. He stabbed him in the
Nick Gage.
fluorescent tube. So it's pretty cool, but it's a redemption story. And I like it. I mean, it was really well filmed. I wasn't expecting much going into it, but I actually think it's it's a sleeper hit. And if you're a wrestling fan or not, I think you're going to I think it's something that you can sort of get behind him as the underdog, and everyone loves the underdog story. So something to watch for your homework this week. Have you seen?
Very good.
Have you caught the movie?
I have, yeah. I saw it a month or two back. Yeah, very, very good. And it had a real sort of indie feel to it. The way it was recorded, the way it was shot, I thought it was done very well.
For sure. Well, Rotten Tomatoes rated it at 89%, so it's not a bad rating for something starring David Arquette. No. I think it's as hot as anything in a film ever. For sure.
Oh, it will be. Of course it will be. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, with that brings us to the end of our very first podcast. Luke, it's been a pleasure getting this out the way, and I look forward to many more.
Yeah, me too.
Good win.
Okay, well, see you soon. Cheers.
Oh, how do you think it went?
Oh, how do I think it went? Sorry, I didn't hear it. Broke up. I think it went very well. Yeah, I think it went very well. You had a couple of little nuggets in there that really made me laugh. Yeah, it was good, and it was it just, as I said earlier, like it's not a chore at all. We just flew through it. It was great. Yeah, I'm pleased.
For sure.
How do you think it went?
I think it went really well. Well, later in this week, we're going to be releasing our predictions for the TLC pay-per-view. So that's something to look forward to, as well as an unboxing video from myself where I'll be unveiling some of our Black Friday goodies that I've ordered. So some videos coming your way, and I look forward to seeing you guys when we do. So catch you later.
Yes.
Hi guys, Luke Carpenter here. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember, if you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye.